Morning. Dziękuję bardzo. Och, it's filter rodestock. This Misha Drolling, unwill to Gamal. There seems to be this modern idea within neo-paganism, within modern paganism, within neo-druidry, I should say, that you can be a solitary druid. No, you can't. What do you mean you can't? Everything, every book, no, you can't. Well, where does this come from? It comes from the 1700s Welsh romantic bardism that's taken something completely out of context. So you have to understand that first and foremost, being in Irish it's a Dree. I think in Welsh it's Derwydd. Being a druid is a title for something. It's a job title. It's a job description. It's a social political role within a community, within a tribe, within a people. I've said time and time again, it's more like the idea of a rabbi and less like the idea of a priest. The counselor, the philosopher, the teacher. You know, they're not these wise, magical, wizard, sage type of people that are mysterious, wandering around, lurking around, darkened forest groves. They were on the farm. They were in the community. They were keepers of law. They were passers down of tradition. They were teachers. So to be a druid, if you will, means that you serve a people, means that those people require your services. Not every family, hearth group, or tribe, if you will, had a druid. So to call yourself a modern druid, you have to ask yourself what that means if you're not serving a people. If you're not, in the context of now, if you're not doing the work, the service work from the cultural standpoint, then what are you doing? Well, I'm a solitary druid. It doesn't really make much sense. I mean, it does make sense in neo-druidry and modern druid stuff. It makes sense to that path. But it also doesn't, because it's not borne out by the evidence. It's not cultural. And I guess that's where you could say I define things differently, and many people like me define things differently when it comes to the word druid versus the word dree. Dree. Sometimes D-R-A-O-I fada, or in Old Irish I think it's D-R-U-I fada. There's a difference for us culturally. solitary practitioner of someone who is a druid? Doesn't make sense. It's like, well, I'm a judge, but I'm not on the bench. Or I am an officer of the law, but I have no badge and I have no authority in my community. No one recognizes me as an officer, but I'm an officer. Go even a little further and say, well, I'm a storyteller, but I don't have any stories to tell. I'm a harp player, but I don't own a harp, and I can't play one. What does being? I asked the question. What does it mean to be a solitary druid? Perhaps you are on the druid path. Maybe that's a better way of saying it. Maybe you're in the education process and not yet in the serving process. Maybe you're still learning, but I wouldn't go as far as even calling that being a druid, though. That's like something you would get as you would graduate, as you've earned the title of. I mean, you could probably put it into the same boat as getting a degree, or you can't call yourself a master mason if you're not. I mean, people do. You can't say, well, I'm a black belt. I mean, people do. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff all over the internet with people who have stolen valor. And that's a no-no. You don't wear pins and uniforms and pretend that you're in the military. That's a no-no. Stop pretending that you're a druid. Well, maybe you are a druid, but you're not a druid. And that's where I draw the line. I've done videos on that. I will link them below if you're interested in my thoughts on that. Excuse me a second. So, again, I'm asking, what does being a solitary druid mean? What does a solitary druid do? You have to serve a people, and those people must require your services. It's that simple. Or else you're just some dude, some lady, with an education. Now, I think this derives from something in the Neo-Druid world, where there's some sort of quasi-educational system, introduction into Celtic paganism, if you will, through different orders, where they use terminology that's borrowed from Gaelic culture, but often for their own agenda. So maybe in the Neo-Druid world, the concept of being a solitary druid is someone who has an interest into things Celtic. I'm going to use that as an umbrella term. Who has done some reading. They're mildly educated. And they've started celebrating some form of Celtic path. But they're on their own. Still not a druid. I mean, I don't know enough about Judaic culture, but are there solitary rabbis? I mean, maybe there are some types of groups of, you know, rabbis that focus on specific things that don't have involvement in the concept of a people. I don't know. I don't have that answer. Maybe John's watching. Maybe John knows. My buddy John knows a lot about Judaic culture. But, I mean, to me it seems like the rabbi would be very involved in the community. It's kind of their job. There's a focus on education, I think. There's a focus on, passing things down or seeing that no mistakes are made during ritual. And, I think they have that idea of being kosher and following certain types of, protocols, and this is our tradition. It's the same thing in a way for, the cultural aspect of a Druid. It's not necessarily the Druid's job to hold the ritual, to conduct the ritual, and to lead the ritual. No. From what we know the most is they had to be present. They had to oversee in such a way that no mistakes were made during the process of ritual. They had to be present at sacrifice. It didn't mean that they were the ones that were doing the sacrifice. Now they could. Anybody could be fulfilling these roles as long as the Druid was present to make sure no mistakes were made in the process of doing these things. And this goes back to the concept of the video that I did with Robert on sacramental clergy versus sacrificial clergy. It's a longer video, it's about an hour, but it's really well worth it. We also did one on magic from the Gaelic polytheist perspective. So yeah, I'm just throwing that out there. I see a lot of people now and then claiming to be solitary druids, and it makes me chuckle. So I'm gonna go make some tea, and I think I'm gonna do another video either today or tonight on the topic of why you cannot start a Druid group. Why can't you start a Druid group? Well, there's a reason why. So, Slungapole.